Here at Number Hub, we get a lot of requests to look into the numbers behind various situations. Often strange situations. If you have your own such request, feel free to add it to the comments underneath. Now recently, someone asked, can you look into the numbers behind the national debts of various countries? Specifically, which country has the worst debt? Well, this is just statistics, right? So we thought, how hard can it be? It turns out very. For a start, national debt is a bit of a political subject. So within any given country, different people have different agendas to argue it's higher or lower. Even if you can get an agreed value for one country, all the different countries don't put out their statistics at the same time, and they're updated very, very slowly. A lot of current analysis of debt statistics is over 2 years old. That's not really good enough. Because of the recent roller coaster ride of recession, coupled with the ongoing Ferris wheel of exchange rates, the statistics get out of date very quickly. I simply couldn't find what I would consider a nice, reliable data set to compare all the current national debts in the world. However, here at Number Hub, we have a solution for that problem. Don't be specific. I'm going to sacrifice precision for a very broad gain in accuracy. And so these are my very, very rough numbers. If you compare countries in terms of just the general value in absolute terms of their debt, the US wins very easily. The United States of America has a debt of about 16 trillion US dollars. Does complicate that slightly by owing money to itself as well as other places, but in general terms, it's got about 1.5 tens of trillions of dollars of debt. A distant second is Japan. Japan's debt is about 10 trillion US dollars, about 2/3 of what the US has, and from here it drops off very, very quickly. Both Germany and Italy have debts of about $3 trillion, followed by France, China, and the UK, all with about 2 trillion. The US has clearly got this. But maybe that's not a fair way to compare various debts. In fact, the US has a big debt because it's got a big population. It's got a very big economy. What if we take that into account? In fact, the CIA World Factbook has a leaderboard for all countries comparing their debts in terms of their gross domestic product. And the number one winner on that scale is now Japan. Japan's debt is 214% of its GDP. That's number one in the world, followed by the big powerhouse economy at number 2 of Zimbabwe. Its debt is just over 200% of its gross domestic product, followed by Greece. Okay, that makes more sense. 160% of its GDP equals its debt. And then St. Kitts and Nevis. I've never heard of it either. To be honest, I believe it's in the Caribbean somewhere. Wherever it is, its debt is 144% of its gross domestic product. Obviously, these stats can be skewed very quickly by smaller countries. If you look for the countries you expect to see on a table like this, you get the United Kingdom in 19th place. Its debt is about 88.7% of its GDP, according to the CIA. And then the United States is in 35th place with 73.6%. Maybe a better comparison is to do this per person. If you calculate how much each person in a country owes, you can get a sense of the debt. It's the per capita approach. And again, Japan wins. Japan comes in number one with about 90,000 US dollars of debt per person. And then the US is in at number 2. It's got about 50,000 US dollars of debt per person, as, surprisingly, does Belgium. The United Kingdom doesn't show up until much later. It's got about 25,000 US dollars of debt per person. Now, I wanted to come up with my own way to compare countries and find out which one has the worst debt. Now, I realized it's not just about how big the debt is compared to the economy. It's not just about how big the debt is compared to the population. Most importantly, when you're talking about debt, what you need to worry about is how fast can you pay it off. Now, there's all sorts of reasons you can argue for how much debt a government should or shouldn't have. I'm going to leave the economics to one side. What I did was I just took the size of each country's debt as a percentage of its GDP, and then I found out for each country what percentage of the GDP is taken in tax every year. And then I divided one of those numbers by the other. I calculated if the government spent all the tax it collects on its debt, how fast can it pay it off? And then I worked out which 5 countries were the worst. Coming in at number 5 is Italy. Italy takes a lot of tax. Almost half of its GDP is taken in tax every year, but it would still take it 2 to 3 years to completely clear its debt. Coming in at number 4 is Greece. Greece, if it really wanted to, could clear its debt in 3 to 4 years. Coming in at number 3 is the United States. The US has a very low level of tax. The government takes less than a quarter of the GDP every year. It would take it 4 to 5 years to clear its debt. Coming in at number 2 is a surprise entrant with India. India could clear its debt in half a decade, should it wish to. And then number 1 is Japan. Once again, Japan. It would take it 5 to 6 years to completely clear its debt. Japan is absolutely our winner today. In every but one of our measurements, Japan has come in top, and the one time it wasn't top, it was second. To be fair, with Japan, it has had a few problems recently. It's had the occasional earthquake, tsunami, something involving a nuclear power plant. It's had a lot of unexpected DIY costs. But however you cut it, at the end of the day, no matter how approximate your numbers, no matter which way you compare it, Japan is the land of the rising debt.